The massive glass dome of the Galactic Council chambers stretched high above the curved rows of seats. Delegates from across the galaxy sat in their designated areas, their different forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. The air hummed, with the sound of translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Zephyr stood at the center speaking platform. His tall, thin frame and blue-gray skin marked him as one of the Altarian people. His forearms moved in careful patterns as he spoke, a sign of deep worry among his kind. The holographic display behind him showed star charts and data streams that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Fellow council members," Zephyr began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "We have a problem. For the past 6 months, our monitoring stations have detected unusual activity from the Sol system. The humans are becoming restless." A ripple of concerned murmurs went through the assembled delegates. The Sol system was a name that carried weight in the council chambers, though few of the younger members understood why. It was just another star system on the outer edge of explored space, home to a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between planets. Elder Thorn of the Centauri Collective raised one of his many tentacles. "Ambassador Zephyr, surely you exaggerate. The humans are contained within their designated space. They have been for 3,000 years. What threat could they possibly pose?" Zephyr's display changed to show a series of energy readings. The E numbers were small, but they showed a clear upward trend over the past several months. "The containment barriers are showing stress fractures. Small ones, but they are growing. If they fail completely..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The oldest members of the council remembered the stories. They had been passed down through generations, warnings about what humans could become if they were ever allowed to wake up fully. Far away from the council chambers, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the UES Defender. The ship was one of humanity's newer vessels, built with the best technology they had developed in the past 50 years. To Jake, it represented the peak of human achievement. He had no way of knowing that the same technology had been used by other species thousands of years ago. The Defender moved slowly through the asteroid field at the edge of human space. Jake's mission was simple: patrol the border, watch for pirates or smugglers, and make sure no unauthorized ships entered or left human territory. It was routine work, the kind that let his mind wander while his crew handled the basic operations. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Amy Foster from the sensor station, "I'm picking up some odd readings from the outer marker buoys." Jake turned his attention to the main display. The marker buoys were automated devices that marked the edge of human space. They had been there for as long as anyone could remember, quietly doing their job without any problems. "What kind of readings?" "Power fluctuations, like something is interfering with their systems, but there's nothing out there that should be causing it." Jake frowned. In his 10 years of service, he had never heard of the marker buoys having technical problems. They were simple devices built to last centuries without maintenance. "Run a full diagnostic. Maybe we need to replace some of them." What Jake didn't know was that the marker buoys were not human technology. They were part of a massive network of devices that surrounded human space, creating an invisible barrier that did much more than mark territory. They had been placed there by the Galactic Council 3,000 years ago, and they had never been meant to be permanent. On the research Station Deep Space Omega, Dr. Lisa Carter stared at her computer screen with growing confusion. The numbers didn't make sense. For the past week, she had been detecting energy patterns from beyond the edge of human space. The patterns were too regular to be natural, but they didn't match any known technology. Lisa was one of humanity's top experts in exotic energy research. Her job was to study strange phenomena that might lead to new discoveries or technologies. Most of her work involved analyzing data from deep space telescopes and sensor arrays. It was quiet work, but it sometimes led to exciting breakthroughs. "Computer, run another analysis of the energy signatures from grid section 77 Alpha," she said to her workstation. The computer's synthetic voice responded immediately. "Analysis complete. Energy patterns show artificial origin with 97% probability. Patterns suggest barrier or containment technology of unknown design." Lisa leaned back in her chair. Barrier technology? What would anyone want to contain in empty space? The area beyond human territory was supposed to be unexplored, empty except for a few dead star systems and cosmic dust. But the energy readings suggested something much more complex was happening out there. She made a note to contact the Space Exploration Authority in the morning. They would want to know about this discovery. Unknown technology was always worth investigating, especially if it might represent contact with alien civilizations. Meanwhile, in the Vorthak Empire's military headquarters, Admiral Kron studied. The intelligence report spread across his desk. The Vorthak were a proud warrior race, known throughout their region of space for their military might and technological superiority. They had conquered dozens of star systems and enslaved entire species. To them, strength was the only thing that mattered. Kron was young for an admiral, having earned his position through a series of brilliant victories against the Empire's enemies. His dark scales gleamed under the office lights, and his yellow eyes showed the intelligence and ambition that had made him successful. He was also impatient with the old ways and the cautious approach of his senior officers. "The human systems are lightly defended," he said to his aide, a nervous junior officer named Vex. "Their ships are primitive, their weapons outdated. They would make easy targets for a quick strike." Vex shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the senior commanders have advised against any action toward the human territory. They say there are historical reasons for caution." Kron's eyes narrowed. "Historical reasons? These humans have barely learned to travel between stars. What possible threat could they represent to the Empire?" "I don't know, sir. The records are classified at the highest levels. But the orders are clear. Human space is off limits." Kron stood and walked to the large window that looked out over the Empire's capital city. Ships moved between the towering spires, carrying goods and soldiers to every corner of Vorthak territory. The Empire was strong, perhaps the strongest single power in this part of the galaxy. Why should they fear a backward species that couldn't even defend their own borders properly? "Vex, prepare a small scouting force. 3 ships, no more. We're going to take a closer look at these humans and see what all the fuss is about." "Sir, that would be a direct violation of the non-interference protocols. The protocols were written by old fools who see danger in every shadow. These humans are nothing special. A few scans, maybe a small probe of their defenses, and we'll know exactly what we're dealing with." Kron had no way of knowing that his decision would change the course of galactic history. The non-interference protocols he dismissed so easily had been written by beings who had witnessed the last time humans had been allowed to show their true nature. Those protocols were not suggestions or guidelines. They were desperate attempts to keep contained something that the galaxy's elder races had created in a moment of terrible necessity. As Kron's ships began their journey toward human space, the energy barriers that surrounded the Sol system started to respond to the approaching threat. The barriers had been designed to keep humans contained, but they had a secondary function that had not been activated for 3,000 years. When faced with hostile intent directed at humanity, the barriers would begin to weaken, allowing humanity's dormant nature to slowly wake up. The process was subtle at first. Humans across their territory began to sleep more restlessly. Dreams filled with strange images of battles and weapons they had never seen became common. Some people reported feeling more alert, more aware of their surroundings. Others found themselves thinking about things they had never considered before, like tactical situations and combat strategies. Dr. Carter was among the first to notice the changes. Her research into the energy patterns had expanded, and she was now detecting similar signatures from within human space itself. The readings were faint, but they seemed to be coming from human colonies, stations, and even Earth itself. Captain Morrison felt the changes too, though he didn't understand what they meant. During his ship's patrol, he found himself making tactical decisions with unusual confidence. His crew responded to his orders with an efficiency that surprised him. When they encountered a group of pirates near the asteroid field, Morrison found himself outmaneuvering them with strategies he had never learned in any academy. The pirates fled after a brief engagement, but Morrison was left with questions he couldn't answer. Where had those tactics come from? Why did operating his ship in combat feel so natural, almost instinctive. Across human space, similar questions were being asked by thousands of people. Commander Alex Harper stood on the bridge of the UES Vigilant, watching the peaceful mining colony of New Denver through the main view screen. The colony was home to nearly 50,000 people, most of them families who had come to the outer systems looking for a better life. The asteroid mining provided good jobs and steady income, making New Denver one of the more successful human settlements. Alex had been assigned to patrol this sector for the past 6 months. It was quiet duty, the kind that let him spend time thinking about his family back on Earth. His sister Emma lived on New Denver with her husband and 2 young children. She had moved there 3 years ago when her husband got a job managing one of the larger mining operations. "Commander," called out Ensign Rick Barnes from the communication station, "we're getting a priority message from the colony. They're reporting unknown ships approaching from the outer system." Alex turned away from the view screen. "Unknown ships? Pirates?" "No, sir. The colony's sensors show 3 vessels, much larger than typical pirate ships. They're not responding to standard identification requests." Alex felt something strange in his chest, a tightness that he had never experienced before. His hands moved to the ship's control systems with unusual certainty. Battle stations. All hands to combat positions. The Vigilance crew had drilled for combat situations many times, but they had never faced a real enemy. Most of them were young officers fresh from the academy, eager for action, but inexperienced in actual warfare. As the ship's systems came online, Alex noticed that his crew was moving with more precision than usual. The unknown ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel just outside New Denver's orbital space. They were sleek, angular vessels with dark hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Alex had never seen designs like them before, but something in his mind recognized them as warships built for destruction. "Sir," Barnes reported, his voice tight with tension, "the unknown vessels are powering weapons. They're targeting the civilian transport ships leaving the colony." Alex watched the display screen show dozens of transport ships fleeing New Denver. Among them was the weekly passenger liner that carried families and workers between the mining colony and other human settlements. Emma had mentioned in her last message that she might be taking that transport to visit friends on another world. The lead alien ship fired without warning. A beam of pure energy lanced out and struck one of the fleeing transports. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking 300 civilian lives in an instant. Something fundamental changed inside Alex Harper at that moment. The tightness in his chest became a burning sensation that spread through his entire body. His vision seemed to become sharper, and his awareness of the tactical situation expanded beyond anything he had experienced before. "Target the lead enemy vessel," he ordered, his voice carrying a new authority that made his crew respond instantly. "All weapons, full power." The Vigilant opened fire with everything it had. The ship's plasma cannons and missile systems unleashed, a barrage that should have taken careful coordination to execute. Instead, Alex found himself controlling the weapons with an instinctive understanding of timing and targeting that amazed his weapons officer. The enemy ship's shields absorbed most of the damage, but Alex could see weak points in their defensive systems that he somehow knew how to exploit. "Concentrate fire on their forward shield generators. Use pattern Delta 7. Lieutenant Amy Chen at the weapons station hesitated. "Sir, pattern Delta 7 isn't in our tactical database." "Execute the order," Alex said, his fingers already working the fire control systems. The pattern emerged in his mind fully formed, as if he had used it countless times before. The Vigilance weapon struck the enemy ship in a precise sequence that overloaded their shield systems. The alien vessel staggered under the impact, its hull showing visible damage, but there were still 2 more enemy ships, and they were turning their attention toward the human warship. On the surface of New Denver, the colony's defense coordinator, Ben Tucker, watched the battle through the settlement's sensor array. Ben was a former military man who had come to the colony to start a new life after his service ended. He had been in charge of the settlement's modest defensive systems for 2 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Get everyone to the emergency shelters," he ordered his small security team, "and prep the defense turrets. We might be there." Next target. The colony's defenses were limited, a few automated turrets designed to deal with pirates and smugglers, and a small garrison of security personnel who were trained more for keeping the peace than fighting a war. Against 3 alien warships, they would be almost useless. But as Ben watched the tactical display, something strange was happening to him. The fear and uncertainty he had felt when the attack began was being replaced by a cold, calculating calm. His mind began analyzing the enemy ship's approach vectors and weapon capabilities with a precision that surprised him. Johnson, Martinez, he called to 2 of his security officers. Take positions at turrets 3 and 7. Set them for overlapping fields of fire on approach vector 27 Mark IV. Sir, Johnson replied, we don't have preset firing solutions for that vector. You will in 30 seconds, Ben said, his hands moving over the defense control systems. The firing solutions appeared in his mind as clearly as if he had memorized them years ago. Within moments, the colony's defense turrets were repositioned and loaded with ammunition patterns that would maximize their effectiveness against the alien ships. In space above the colony, Alex Harper continued to fight a battle that should have been hopeless. The Vigilant was outnumbered and outgunned, but Alex was discovering capabilities he never knew he possessed. His tactical awareness had expanded to encompass the entire battle zone. He could track all 3 enemy ships simultaneously while coordinating his own vessel's weapons and defenses. The second enemy ship fired at the Vigilant with a weapon that should have punched through the human ship's shields and hull. Alex saw the attack coming and ordered evasive maneuvers that brought his ship through the energy beam, with only minor damage to the outer hull plating. How did we survive that? Asked his first officer, Lieutenant Dave Collins. Lucky, Alex replied, but he knew it wasn't luck. Something inside him had calculated the exact trajectory needed to minimize the damage. The same something that was now showing him how to use the Vigilant's relatively primitive weapons to maximum effect against technologically superior opponents. The battle continued for 20 minutes that felt like hours. Alex's crew fought with a coordination and effectiveness that none of them could explain. Ensign Barnes managed communication intercepts that revealed enemy tactical plans. Lieutenant Chen fired weapons combinations that she had never learned, but somehow knew would work. On New Denver, Ben Tucker's defense turrets engaged the 3rd enemy ship when it moved too close to the colony. The alien vessel's shields were designed to stop large ship-mounted weapons, not the smaller but more numerous turret guns that Ben was coordinating with impossible precision. Direct hit on their engine section, reported Martinez from turret 7. They're losing power. Ben nodded, already calculating the next phase of the engagement. The damaged enemy ship was pulling back, but the other 2 were still fighting the Vigilant above the colony. He began preparing a surprise for them, using the colony's mining charges in ways that would have impressed military engineers. Dr. Lisa Carter, still working at Deep Space Omega, was receiving battle reports from across human space. The engagement at New Denver was not the only one happening. Similar attacks were occurring at 3 other human colonies, and in each case, the defenders were performing far beyond their normal capabilities. Her monitoring equipment was detecting massive energy spikes from human settlements across their territory. The readings were unlike anything in her database, showing patterns that suggested fundamental changes in human brain activity and physical performance. Computer, analyze the biorhythm data from the battle zones, she instructed her workstation. Analysis shows unprecedented levels of neural activity among human subjects. Brainwave patterns indicate enhanced cognitive processing and sensory awareness. Physical performance metrics exceed normal human parameters by factors of 2 to 5. Lisa stared at the data in amazement. Humans were somehow becoming more than human during combat situations. But how was that possible? And why was it happening now? The answer was locked in humanity's genetic code, in sequences that had been dormant for 3,000 years. The approaching threat from Admiral Krohn's forces had triggered ancient programming that was now beginning to activate across human space. Humans were remembering skills and abilities that their species had never learned, because they had been designed rather than evolved. Back at New Denver, Alex Harper's tactical genius was reaching its peak. He had maneuvered the Vigilant into a position where the 2 remaining enemy ships were blocking each other's line of fire. A coordinated attack from his weapons, and Ben Tucker's surface defenses disabled the second alien vessel. The third and final enemy ship attempted to retreat, but Alex was already anticipating its escape route. Professor Dan Kelly had been teaching xenobiology at Earth University for 15 years. His classroom was filled with the usual mix of eager students and sleepy ones, all trying to understand the basics of alien life forms that humanity had never actually encountered. It was theoretical work, based on radio signals and long-distance observations of other star systems. Dan was in the middle of explaining protein structures in theoretical alien biochemistry when his assistant burst through the classroom door. "Professor Kelly, you need to see the news feeds. Something's happening at the colonies." Dan frowned at the interruption, but the look on his assistant's face made him turn on the classroom's display screen. The news feeds showed battle footage from New Denver and 3 other human settlements, ships exploding, defense turrets firing, and colonists fighting against alien attackers with impossible skill. As Dan watched the footage, something strange began happening in his mind. The peaceful academic thoughts that usually filled his head were being pushed aside by something else. Military tactics and strategic analysis flowed through his consciousness like water through a broken dam. He found himself studying the battle footage not as a professor of biology, but as someone who understood warfare at a fundamental level. "Class dismissed," he said quietly, his eyes still fixed on the screen. The students filed out, chattering excitedly about the battles, but Dan barely noticed them leaving. His mind was processing the tactical situations shown in the footage with an expertise he had never learned. The aliens were using standard assault patterns, designed to overwhelm defenders through superior firepower and technology, but the human defenders were responding with counter tactics that were far more sophisticated than anything in human military doctrine. Where had they learned to fight like that? More importantly, where was he learning to recognize and analyze their tactics? Dan had never served in the military. His background was entirely academic. Yet he found himself mentally cataloging the weaknesses in the alien attack formations and thinking of ways to exploit them. Captain Jake Morrison's patrol fleet had been recalled from the border to help defend the inner colonies. As his ships moved through space toward the threatened settlements, Jake noticed that his crew was performing their duties with unusual efficiency. Orders were being carried out before he finished giving them. Navigation solutions appeared on his screens that were more precise than anything his computer should have been able to calculate. Lieutenant Amy Foster approached him on the bridge. "Captain, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the border. The energy patterns we detected earlier are changing rapidly. It's like whatever was out there is reacting to the attacks on our colonies." Jake studied the data on his command screen. The patterns were definitely more active now, showing surges and fluctuations that corresponded to the timing of the alien attacks. "It's almost like some kind of automated defense system," he said, then paused. Where had that thought come from? He had never studied automated defense systems. "Sir," Foster continued, "there's something else. The crew efficiency reports show performance levels that are off the charts. Everyone's working better than they ever have before. It's like we've all suddenly become better at our jobs." Jake nodded. He had noticed the same thing. His tactical awareness had expanded beyond anything he had experienced before. When he looked at the star charts and deployment patterns, he could see optimal strategies and fleet movements that would have taken teams of analysts to calculate. The farming world of Terra Nova was one of humanity's newest colonies, settled by families looking for open land and a simpler life. The colonists were mostly farmers, teachers, and small business owners. They had no military training and very limited defensive capabilities. Nick Palmer had been a farmer on Terra Nova for 6 years. He grew wheat and vegetables in the rich soil, selling his produce to the other colonies through the regular transport ships. Nick had never been in the military and had never even owned a weapon more dangerous than a hunting rifle. When the alien ships appeared over Terra Nova, Nick was working in his fields with his teenage son Kevin. The ships were different from the ones that had attacked New Denver. These were larger, designed for planetary assault rather than ship-to-ship combat. "Dad, what are those?" Kevin asked, pointing at the dark shapes moving across the sky. Nick looked up and felt something cold settle in his stomach. But alongside the fear, something else was awakening. His mind began automatically calculating the ship's approach vectors, their likely landing zones, and the best positions for defensive operations. Kevin, get your mother and sister, take them to the emergency shelter behind the barn. I'll be there in a minute. What about you? I need to contact the other farms. We're going to have to defend ourselves. Nick ran to his house and activated the emergency communication system that connected all the farms in the valley. Within minutes, he was coordinating with 24 other families, organizing a defense that should have been impossible for untrained civilians. Jim, take your family to the high ground near Miller's Creek. You'll have good sight lines from there. Sarah, your farm has the best fortified buildings. That's where we'll make our main stand. Everyone else, gather whatever weapons you have and meet at the community center. The farmers responded to Nick's orders without question, as if his sudden military expertise was the most natural thing in the world. Within an hour, the agricultural valley had been transformed into a defensive position that would have impressed professional soldiers. Dr. Lisa Carter was working around the clock now, trying to understand the energy patterns that were spreading across human space. Her research station's computers were running constant analysis of the data streams coming from human colonies and ships. Computer, show me the correlation between the energy spikes and reported combat effectiveness increases. The display screen filled with charts and graphs that showed a clear pattern. Wherever the energy levels were highest, humans were performing far beyond their normal capabilities. The correlation was too strong to be coincidence. Computer, analyze the genetic database for any sequences that might be activated by these energy patterns. Analysis complete. Multiple dormant genetic sequences detected in human DNA. Sequences appear to be artificial rather than naturally evolved. Activation patterns suggest external triggering mechanism. Lisa stared at the results. Artificial genetic sequences. That would mean someone had deliberately modified human DNA at some point in history. But when and why? She began searching through historical databases, looking for any records of genetic manipulation in humanity's past. Most of the early genetic research had been focused on medical applications and had never approached the level of sophistication suggested by her current findings. Meanwhile, Admiral Kron was receiving reports from his 3 attack fleets that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. The humans were not fighting like the primitive species his intelligence reports had described. They were demonstrating tactical skills and combat effectiveness that rivaled the best military forces in the galaxy. Admiral, his aide Vex reported, the first assault fleet has been completely destroyed. The second and third fleets are requesting immediate reinforcement. Kron's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the battle reports. The humans were using weapons and tactics that their technology level should not have supported. More disturbing, they seemed to be learning and adapting faster than any species he had ever encountered. Send the reserve fleets and contact the High Command. Tell them we may need to escalate this operation. Sir, what should I tell them about the nature of the resistance? Kron hesitated. How could he explain that a species that had been dismissed as barely space-capable was now fighting like they had been bred for warfare? Tell them the humans are not what they appear to be. On Terra Nova, Nick Palmer's improvised militia was engaging the alien ground forces with skills that none of them should have possessed. Farmers were using hunting rifles with the precision of trained snipers. Teachers were coordinating flanking maneuvers that trapped entire squads of alien soldiers. Nick himself was directing the battle from the community center, his tactical awareness encompassing the entire valley. He could track the movements of both his own people and the enemy forces, coordinating attacks and defenses with the skill of a veteran general. His son Kevin was serving as a messenger, running between the different defensive positions. Despite being only 16 years old, Kevin was displaying the same enhanced awareness that was affecting all the colonists. He moved through the battlefield with an instinctive understanding of cover and concealment that kept him safe from enemy fire. Dad, Kevin reported after returning from the Miller farm. Jim says the aliens are pulling back from the eastern approach. They've taken heavy casualties. Nick nodded, his mind already calculating the next phase of the battle. Tell Sarah's group to be ready for a counterattack. The aliens will try to concentrate their forces for one final push. The battle for Terra Nova continued through the night, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The human colonists fought with a coordination and effectiveness that made their numerical disadvantage irrelevant. Ambassador Zephyr stood before the sealed vault beneath the Galactic Council headquarters. The massive door was covered in warning symbols written in languages so old that only a few scholars could still read them. The vault had been closed for 3,000 years, and the keys to open it were held by only the most senior members of the council. Elder Thorn of the Centauri Collective moved slowly beside him, his many tentacles shaking with age and worry. "Are you certain we must open this, Zephyr? Some knowledge is better left buried." Zephyr's forearms worked the complex locking mechanism, while his mind raced with the implications of what they might find inside. "The humans are awakening faster than our models predicted. We need to understand what we're dealing with before it's too late to contain them." The vault door slowly opened with a deep rumbling sound that seemed to come from the planet's core. Inside, holographic storage devices lined the walls, their surfaces glowing with the soft blue light of active memory crystals. At the center of the room stood a display table that had not been activated for millennia. "Computer, access historical files authorization code Omega-77 Alpha," Zephyr commanded. The room filled with light as the holographic systems came online. Images began forming in the air above the display table, showing star charts and battle formations from the ancient past. But these were not the sanitized historical records that were taught in schools. These were the real files, the ones that showed the galaxy's darkest secrets. "Beginning playback of classified historical record 777, the computer announced in a voice that carried the weight of ages. "Warning, this information is classified at the highest levels and is not to be shared outside of emergency protocols." The hologram showed the galaxy as it had existed 3,000 years ago. The star maps were different then, with entire sectors that no longer existed. The reason for their absence became clear as the record continued. The Devourer fleet approached from beyond the galactic rim, the computer narrated as images of massive alien ships filled the display. Estimated vessel count 10 million capital ships, estimated total forces 2 billion combat units. Technology level far superior to all known galactic civilizations. Zephyr felt his blood run cold as he watched the recordings of the approaching fleet. The ships were unlike anything he had ever seen, dark and angular with surfaces that seemed to absorb light and hope equally. They moved through space with purpose, destroying everything in their path. All conventional military responses proved ineffective, the computer continued. The Altarian Federation, Centauri Collective, and 47 other major civilizations were reduced to scattered survivors within 2 years of first contact. Elder Thorn's tentacles writhed in distress. "I remember the stories my ancestors told, the darkness that came from beyond the stars, but they never spoke of how it was stopped." The hologram changed to show a different scene. Scientists and military leaders from dozens of species working together in vast laboratories. At the center of their work were primitive beings that Zephyr recognized with growing horror as early humans. In desperation, the surviving civilizations initiated Project Genesis, the computer explained. Using genetic material from the primitive hominids of Sol 3, a new species was created. The subjects were enhanced with the combat knowledge, tactical abilities, and survival instincts of the galaxy's greatest warriors. Zephyr watched as the primitive humans were transformed through advanced genetic engineering. Their DNA was rewritten with sequences from extinct warrior races, enhanced with artificial constructs that would give them capabilities far beyond normal biological limits. The enhanced humans proved to be the perfect weapon, the computer continued. They learned faster than any known species, adapted to any combat situation, and possessed an innate understanding of warfare that exceeded their creators' expectations. The hologram showed battles between the enhanced humans and the Devourer fleet. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the humans fought with a ferocity and skill that began turning the tide of the war. They used tactics that confused and terrified their enemies, seeming to appear everywhere at once and strike where they were least expected. Captain Alex Harper was leading a fleet of 30 human ships deep into what had once been Vorthak territory. His tactical awareness had expanded to encompass entire star systems, allowing him to coordinate attacks across multiple fronts simultaneously. The alien defenders stood no chance against humans who fought like forces of nature. "Captain," Lieutenant Dave Collins reported from the communications station, "we're receiving surrender offers from 12 Vorthak outposts. They're asking for terms." Alex studied the tactical display with eyes that saw patterns and possibilities that would have been invisible to him just weeks before. "Tell them we'll accept nothing less than complete withdrawal from all human space. Any ship that remains will be destroyed." The transformation in Alex was now complete. The mild-mannered patrol captain had become something that even he didn't fully understand. His crew followed his orders without question, trusting in abilities that seemed to come from some deep, ancient source. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kron watched his forces being systematically dismantled by an enemy that had seemed primitive just days before. His intelligence reports had been completely wrong. The humans weren't just defending their territory anymore. They were actively hunting down and destroying any Vorthak ship they could find. "Admiral," Vex reported with obvious fear in his voice, "the humans have destroyed the 7th Fleet completely. They're moving toward our core systems now." Kron's yellow eyes reflected the light from the tactical displays showing his empire's collapse. "How many ships do they have?" "Intelligence estimates suggest no more than 200 combat vessels, sir." 200 ships are destroying an empire of 10,000 worlds? "Yes, sir. They seem to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. They're targeting our command centers, supply lines, and communication networks with precision that suggests complete knowledge of our military structure." Kron was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't just better fighters than expected. They were something else entirely, something that his people's legends warned about but never fully explained. Back in the council vault, the holographic record continued its terrible revelation. The enhanced humans had not only defeated the Devourer fleet, but had pursued the survivors beyond the galactic rim, hunting them down with relentless determination. The war was won, the computer reported, but the victory came at a cost that the surviving civilizations had not anticipated. The hologram showed the aftermath of the war. Entire sectors of the galaxy had been devastated, not by the Devourer fleet but by the enhanced humans in their pursuit of total victory. The humans had become so focused on destroying their enemies that they had begun to see any potential threat as something that needed to be eliminated. The enhanced humans could not be controlled or reasoned with, the computer explained. They had been designed to be the perfect weapon, but weapons do not choose when to stop fighting. Zephyr watched, with growing horror as the record showed human fleets attacking former allies, viewing them as potential future threats that needed to be prevented. The species that had been created to save the galaxy was now threatening to destroy what remained of it. The decision was made to implement the containment protocols, the computer continued. The enhanced humans were isolated in their home system and placed under genetic suppressors designed to limit their abilities to normal baseline levels. The hologram showed the construction of the massive energy barriers around human space. The barriers were not just containment fields, but sophisticated genetic manipulation devices that would keep the enhanced sequences dormant as long as they remained active. Dr. Lisa Carter had finally pieced together the truth from her research on Earth. The energy patterns she had been detecting were not natural phenomena but artificial systems designed to suppress human genetic potential. The recent fluctuations and failures were allowing humanity's true nature to emerge for the first time in 3,000 years. Computer, project the rate of genetic awakening based on current barrier degradation. Projection complete. At current rates, full genetic activation will occur across human space within 6 months. Once complete, the process will be irreversible. Lisa stared at the projection with a mixture of awe and terror. Humanity was remembering what they had been designed to be, but the record suggested that what they were becoming might be more dangerous than anyone had imagined. On Terra Nova, Nick Palmer was organizing the colonists for what everyone knew would be the final phase of their transformation. The farming families who had once struggled to defend themselves were now discussing military strategies that would have impressed galactic war colleges. His son, Kevin, approached him with a report from the outer settlements. "Dad, the energy readings from the old archaeological sites are getting stronger. People who visit them are coming back changed." Nick nodded. He had noticed the same thing. The ancient ruins that had been discovered on several human worlds were resonating with energy that seemed to accelerate the awakening process. "Tell everyone to stay away from those sites for now." The final battle began at the edge of the galaxy, in a region of space that had been empty for 3,000 years. This was where the last remnants of the Devourer fleet had been destroyed by the first enhanced humans, and where the Vorthak Empire had assembled every ship they could find for one desperate attempt to stop humanity's advance. Commander Alex Harper stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Retribution, watching as nearly 2,000 Vorthak vessels took defensive positions around a dead star system. His own fleet consisted of only 300 ships, but Alex felt no concern about the odds. The tactical awareness flowing through his mind showed him exactly how the battle would unfold. "All ships, assume attack formation Gamma," Alex ordered, his voice carrying across the communication channels to every human vessel in the fleet. "Remember, we are not just fighting for our territory anymore. We are fighting for our right to exist as we truly are." The human ships moved with perfect coordination, each captain understanding their role in the larger strategy without needing detailed orders. They had all undergone the same transformation that Alex had experienced. Their minds expanded beyond normal human limitations to encompass the tactical knowledge of the galaxy's greatest warriors. Admiral Kron watched the approaching human fleet from his command ship with a mixture of fear and fascination. His intelligence reports had grown increasingly disturbing over the past weeks. The humans were not just winning battles. They were completely dismantling every military force they encountered with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. "Sir," Vex reported, "the human fleet is moving into attack position. Their formation doesn't match any known tactical doctrine." Kron studied the display screen showing the human ships. They were arranged in patterns that seemed random at first glance, but as he watched, he began to see the underlying logic. The formation was designed to maximize their striking power while minimizing their exposure to return fire. It was a work of tactical art that would have taken teams of strategists months to develop. "How long did it take them to plan this attack?" he asked. "Sir, our surveillance shows they only detected our fleet position 2 hours ago." Kron felt his blood turn cold. The humans had developed and implemented a complex battle strategy in the time it would normally take just to organize a basic response. They were not just enhanced soldiers, they were something far beyond that. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the battle through the deep space sensor networks while trying to understand the full implications of humanity's transformation. Her research had revealed that the genetic activation was now complete across all human populations. Every man, woman, and child in human space had access to the enhanced capabilities that had been dormant for millennia. Computer, analyze current human performance metrics compared to baseline projections. Analysis complete. Current human capabilities exceed original enhancement parameters by factors of 10 to 50 across all measured categories. The species appears to be evolving beyond the original genetic programming. Lisa stared at the data with growing alarm. The humans were not just remembering their designed capabilities. They were somehow improving on them, becoming something that even their original creators had never intended. The question was whether this evolution would stop or continue indefinitely. At the Deep Space Research Station, Professor Dan Kelly was coordinating humanity's response to threats across the galaxy while analyzing the strategic implications of their expanding capabilities. His transformation from peaceful academic to master strategist was now complete, but the knowledge flowing through his mind included disturbing insights about humanity's future. "General Rogers, we need to discuss the reports from the outer colonies," he said to the woman who now commanded Earth's defense forces. "The settlers are demonstrating capabilities that go far beyond the original enhancement parameters." General Kate Rogers studied the reports with eyes that reflected the same enhanced awareness that now characterized all of humanity. "The children are the most concerning. They're showing tactical understanding that would be impressive in veteran officers. Some of them are developing strategic insights that our best planners can't match. Dan nodded grimly. It's not just combat skills. They're demonstrating enhanced intelligence, pattern recognition, and problem-solving abilities across all areas. We're becoming something that may be beyond our ability to control. The battle in the Outer Rim continued as the human fleet engaged the Vorthak forces with devastating effectiveness. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the left wing of the attack, his tactical awareness encompassing dozens of ships simultaneously. He could track every enemy vessel while coordinating complex maneuvers that would have been impossible for unenhanced humans to execute. Enemy battleship at coordinate 77 Mark 9 is attempting to flank our formation, he reported to Alex Harper over the command channel. Recommend intercept pattern Delta 9. Confirmed. Execute at your discretion, Alex replied, his mind already focused on the larger strategic picture. Jake's wing moved to intercept the flanking force with precision that amazed even the enhanced human crews. They destroyed the enemy battleship and its escorts within minutes, then smoothly returned to their assigned positions in the main attack formation. On Terra Nova, Nick Palmer was coordinating the defense of human space from potential threats, while watching the battle reports with his son Kevin. The farming colony had been transformed into a military command center, with farmers and teachers now serving as tactical analysts and strategic planners. Dad, the energy readings from the ancient sites are spiking again, Kevin reported. It's like they're responding to the battle somehow. Nick studied the sensor data with enhanced perception that allowed him to see patterns that would have been invisible to his old self. The sites are not just archaeological ruins, they're some kind of communication or coordination network. The more we awaken, the more active they become. Kevin nodded, his 16-year-old mind now capable of understanding strategic concepts that would have challenged experienced military officers. What if they're preparing us for something? What if the awakening isn't random? Nick felt a chill run through him as he considered his son's words. The boy was right. The pattern of human enhancement was too organized, too purposeful to be accidental. Something was guiding their transformation, preparing them for a challenge that had not yet revealed itself. In the council chambers on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Zephyr received the final reports from the monitoring stations around human space. The news was worse than his most pessimistic projections. Humanity was not just breaking free of their containment. They were actively expanding their territory and demonstrating capabilities that far exceeded the original enhancement parameters. Elder Thorn, we need to implement the emergency protocols immediately, he said to the ancient being beside him. The humans are becoming too powerful to contain through conventional means. Thorn's tentacles writhed with agitation. The emergency protocols were designed for the original enhanced humans. These new ones are far beyond anything our ancestors planned for. I fear our options may be limited. Zephyr brought up the holographic displays showing human expansion across the galaxy. In just weeks, they had gone from a contained species to the dominant military force in their region of space. At their current rate of growth, they would control significant portions of the galaxy within months. What about the Omega option? Zephyr asked quietly. Thorn's ancient eyes widened in horror. You cannot be serious. The Omega option would destroy entire star systems. The cure would be worse than the disease. Would it? Look at the projections. At their current expansion rate, the humans will encounter other major civilizations within the year. When that happens, we could be looking at a galactic war that makes the Devourer conflict look like a minor skirmish. The battle in the Outer Rim was reaching its conclusion as the last Vorthak ships attempted to retreat. Alex Harper's fleet had destroyed over 90% of the enemy forces while suffering minimal casualties themselves. The few surviving Vorthak vessels fled toward the Galactic Rim, carrying news of humanity's overwhelming victory to whatever remained of their empire. All ships cease fire, Alex ordered as the last enemy contacts disappeared from the sensors. Begin search and rescue operations for any survivors. The human fleet's behavior after the battle was perhaps more disturbing than their performance during it. They moved through the wreckage with methodical efficiency, rescuing enemy survivors and treating them with care that seemed at odds with their devastating military effectiveness. Dr. Carter was monitoring these post-battle activities when she made a disturbing discovery. Computer, analyze human behavior patterns during and after combat operations. Analysis shows enhanced humans maintain complete emotional control during combat while demonstrating increased empathy and care for defeated enemies afterward. Pattern suggests artificial behavioral modification designed to prevent excessive aggression. Lisa realized with growing alarm that humanity's creators had built safeguards into their genetic programming to prevent them from becoming mindless killers. But those safeguards were designed for the original enhancement parameters.